Donald Trump went on Truth Social and told the entire world that the Iran deal is a, quote, largely negotiated. Hormuz will reopen. The war will end. Oil prices will crash. Peace is coming. That was 2 weeks ago. And here is what has happened since that announcement. The US military struck 5 Iranian naval bases around the Strait of Hormuz. Iran shot down a US Apache helicopter. IRGC drones hit the US Fifth Fleet in Bahrain. And Iran's own state media called Trump's announcement, quote, incomplete and inconsistent with reality. So is this deal real? Or is this the biggest diplomatic illusion in modern history? In the next 20 minutes, I am going to show you exactly what is inside this deal, what Iran agreed to, what Iran refused, and why the most dangerous part of this entire negotiation has not even started yet. Because what Trump is not telling you is that Iran right now has 440 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60% purity, one technical step away from a nuclear weapon, and that uranium is not part of this deal. Let's start with what Trump actually said, because the announcement itself was extraordinary. Trump wrote on Truth Social, an agreement has been largely negotiated, subject to finalization between the United States of America, the Islamic Republic of Iran, and the various other countries. CNO break down those words carefully. Largely negotiated, not finalized, not signed, not done, largely and subject to finalization, meaning the most important details are still being worked out. So what is actually agreed? Here is what we know from multiple sources. The broad strokes of the memorandum include a 60-day cessation of violence, along with clauses that call for reopening the strait and a framework to reopen negotiations on Iran's nuclear program. CN 60 days. That is what this deal buys. 2 months of ceasefire, 2 months of Hormuz being open, 2 months of oil prices dropping, and then the clock resets and we are back at the same table with the same problems. Under the tentative agreement, the US would gradually lift its naval blockade on Iranian ports and would also agree to relax sanctions, allowing Iran to sell more of its oil. This is significant. Iran has been under a complete US naval blockade since April. Ships cannot enter or leave Iranian ports. Iran's oil exports have been zero. Every day of the blockade costs Iran hundreds of millions of dollars. Lifting that blockade, even partially, is a massive concession from the US side. The memorandum makes clear that Iran will not be able to impose tolls on the Strait of Hormuz, and that Iran will have to remove all mines from the vital waterway within 30 days. CN mines. Iran has placed naval mines inside the Strait of Hormuz, the same waterway through which 20% of the world's oil flows every single day. Under this deal, Iran has 30 days to remove those mines. And here is the key question: who verifies that the mines are actually removed? How does the US confirm that every single mine is gone? Because one mine hitting an oil tanker after the deal is signed would collapse the entire agreement instantly. This is the first major problem with this deal. Now let's talk about what Iran actually agreed to, because this is where the story gets very complicated. Iran's foreign ministry confirmed the deal includes a memorandum of understanding as a first phase, before broader talks within 30 to 60 days. So Iran is agreeing to a process, not a final outcome. But here is the bombshell that mainstream media is completely burying. Iran has not agreed to hand over its highly enriched uranium stockpile, and the nuclear issue was not part of the preliminary agreement with the US. According to a senior Iranian source quoted by Reuters, Al Jazeera, that again, the nuclear issue, the entire reason this war started, is not part of this deal. Trump went to war with Iran in February 2026 for one primary stated reason: to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons. The US and Israel struck Iranian nuclear facilities, killed nuclear scientists, destroyed centrifuge production plants. And now the deal that is being signed does not address the nuclear program at all. Trump also failed to mention any agreement on Iran's nuclear program, or its highly enriched uranium, both of which his administration has repeatedly cited as critical to ending the war. Al Jazeera. So Trump fought a war that killed thousands of people, closed the Strait of Hormuz, pushed the global economy toward recession, and the deal he is about to sign with Iran's nuclear program completely intact. Iran right now has 440 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60% purity. That is one small technical step from weapons grade 90%. The IAEA has confirmed this, and under this deal, that uranium stays in Iran. A White House official told CBS News, President Trump will only make a deal that is good for America and satisfies his red lines. Iran can never possess a nuclear weapon. See, Iran can never possess a nuclear weapon. That is Trump's red line. And yet Iran's enriched uranium, the material needed to build that weapon, is not being addressed in phase 1 of this deal. This is the central contradiction that nobody in the mainstream media is honestly discussing. Now let's talk about the country that made this deal possible, and that nobody is giving enough credit to. Pakistan. Talks between the US and Iran are being mediated by Pakistan. Issues under discussion include freedom of navigation through the Strait of Hormuz, Iran's nuclear and ballistic program, reconstruction and sanctions, and a long-term peace agreement. Al Jazeera. Pakistan, a country that borders both Iran and is a close partner of China, managed to bring the United States and Iran to the same table. This is historically unprecedented. The last time the US and Iran had senior-level direct diplomatic engagement was 1979. US delegation led by Vice President J.D. Vance met with Iranian counterparts in Islamabad on April 11th and 12th, the senior-most diplomatic engagement between the two countries since 1979. Can Harold think about the significance of that? J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States, sitting across a table from Iranian officials in Islamabad for the first time in 47 years. And it was Pakistan's Prime Minister, Shehbaz Sharif, who personally called Trump and convinced him to pause the US naval operation in Hormuz at a critical moment. When the ceasefire was about to collapse, Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif responded to Trump's announcement of the pause in the operation to open the Strait of Hormuz, naming Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman as a partner who prodded the US president to suspend the military mission in the waterway. News in Pakistan and Saudi Arabia working together to stop a US military operation. This is the new Middle East. The old alliances are gone. New power brokers have emerged, and Pakistan, a nuclear-armed country with close ties to both China and the Islamic world, is now sitting at the center of the most important negotiation on the planet. Section 4. The nuclear trap. 60 days, and then what? 12 o'clock to 15:30. Now let's talk about what happens after 60 days, because this is the part that should terrify every world leader right now. The deal gives 60 days of ceasefire, 60 days of Hormuz being open, 60 days of oil prices dropping, 60 days of the global economy recovering. And then, the nuclear negotiations begin. The US wants Iran to suspend uranium enrichment for at least a decade and remove its enriched uranium from the country. The Times of Israel's position: nuclear enrichment is our sovereign right. We will never give it up completely, and we definitely will not hand our uranium stockpile to a foreign country. Multiple sources told CBS that the arrangement also involves the potential of waivers or sanctions relief to Iran that could allow it to access billions in frozen assets depending on the progress of the diplomacy. So here is the trap that Iran has set, and it is genuinely brilliant from a strategic perspective. Iran agrees to open Hormuz. Oil prices crash. Trump looks like a winner. The global economy recovers. US public pressure to maintain sanctions on Iran drops dramatically. In 60 days, Iran comes to the nuclear table. But now Trump has LESS leverage, because the economic crisis is over. The longer the war went on, the more desperate Trump was for a deal because of oil prices. Once Hormuz opens and oil prices drop, Trump's urgency disappears. But so does his leverage. Iran is betting that once the economic pressure is removed, Trump will accept a nuclear deal that leaves Iran's enrichment program largely intact, because the alternative, going back to war after a ceasefire, is politically almost impossible for any US president. This is not just a ceasefire. This is a carefully designed strategic trap, and Trump may have already walked into it. So where does this go? 3 scenarios for the next 60 days. Scenario 1. The deal holds and nuclear talks begin. 40% chance. Hormuz reopens. Mines are removed. Oil prices drop to $75 to $80 per barrel. The global economy starts recovering. Trump declares victory. Nuclear talks begin in round 2. But Iran refuses to give up enrichment. Negotiations drag on for months. Iran's uranium stockpile stays in place. A temporary peace becomes permanent, without the nuclear issue ever being resolved. This is actually the best-case scenario. No more shooting. But Iran keeps its nuclear capability. Scenario 2. A deal collapses within 60 days. 35% chance. Iran imposes tolls on Hormuz again. Or a mine hits a tanker. Or Israel strikes an Iranian target. And the entire deal falls apart. Trump already criticized Iran for doing a very poor job of allowing oil to flow through the Strait of Hormuz following the April ceasefire, saying that is not the agreement we have. Al Jazeera: this happened once already. It can happen again. One violation, deliberate or accidental, and the ceasefire is dead. Scenario 3. Nuclear standoff. 25% chance. The 60-day ceasefire holds. Nuclear talks begin. But Iran refuses to give up its uranium. Trump refuses to lift sanctions without nuclear concessions. The talks collapse, but now neither side wants to restart the war, because Hormuz is open and the global economy is recovering. Both sides stay frozen, officially at peace, but Iran keeps its nuclear program. This is the scenario Israel fears most, because a frozen conflict with a nuclear-capable Iran is Israel's worst nightmare. Watch these signals in the next 30 days. First, does Hormuz actually reopen fully for commercial tankers? Second, does Iran hand over or destroy any enriched uranium? Third, does Israel conduct any strikes on Iran during the ceasefire? Those 3 signals will tell you which scenario we are heading into. Donald Trump says the deal is largely negotiated. Iran says the nuclear issue is not part of the deal. Pakistan says peace is coming. Israel says the war is not over. And 440 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60%. Purity sits in Iranian facilities, untouched, unmonitored, and unchallenged by this agreement. Here is the truth that nobody wants to say out loud. This deal does not end the Iran problem. It pauses it. It buys 60 days of cheaper oil, 60 days of recovering markets, 60 days of political breathing room for Trump. And then in 60 days, the same table, the same demands, the same uranium, the same Iran. The mainstream media will call this a historic peace deal. They will show oil prices dropping and stock markets rising and declare victory. What I am telling you is, the hardest part of this negotiation has not even started yet. And when it does, the entire world will be watching to see whether Trump can get something no US president has ever gotten. Iran giving up its nuclear program completely. Subscribe right now. The moment phase to nuclear talks begin. I will break down every detail before it becomes tomorrow's headline. Comment below. Do you think Iran will ever give up its nuclear program? Yes or no? See you in the next one.